interesting, isn't it? You know, that connection between having a healthy mind and, well, a healthy everything else, right? Like healthy mind, healthy,
Mind.
exactly, healthy
Yeah.
body. It's pretty clear that taking care of your mental well-being is like setting the foundation for overall health, wouldn't you say? And I know our listeners are super interested in figuring out how to make real improvements in their lives, but sometimes the thought of making these huge changes can be a bit daunting.
It can be really overwhelming.
Yeah, totally. So for this deep dive, you shared some awesome ideas from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's all about making small, manageable changes that can really add up over time.
Tiny hinges swing big doors, right?
That's a great way to put it. So our goal today is to kind of break down this framework into those key actionable things that you can actually start using right away.
And I think one of the coolest things about this whole Atomic Habits concept is that it's really focused on the power of small wins that compound over time. Like, you don't need to do these massive overhauls to see huge results.
Okay, I love that. So let's dive into the heart of it. Clear talks about these 4 laws of behavior change. And the first one is cue, make it obvious. So what's that all about?
Well, basically, this law is all about recognizing just how much your environment really influences your habits. Like you mentioned, working out. If you leave your workout clothes out in plain sight, exercise becomes a much more obvious choice, right?
Yeah, I can see that. It's like a little nudge. So for our listeners, think about a habit you really want to build. How could you actually make that cue, that trigger for the habit, more obvious in your day-to-day life?
It really makes you think.
It does. Okay, so the second law is craving, make it attractive. How do we make those good habits we want more appealing?
I think this is really clever. It's about tapping into that part of us that just naturally wants to do things we enjoy. So the idea is to link a habit you're trying to build with something you already love. Maybe you only listen to your favorite podcast while you're walking, for example. That way, the walk itself becomes more attractive because it's linked to something you really enjoy.
That's so smart. It's like tricking yourself into doing something good.
In a way, yeah. So for everyone listening, think about what pairings could work for those habits you're trying to develop. What do you already love that you can link to a new positive habit?
Love it. Now, the third law. Response, make it easy. I feel like this is super important, especially for getting started, right? Can you tell us a bit more about this?
Absolutely. It's about removing those barriers. You know, so often we set these really ambitious goals for ourselves, but when it comes to habits, it's way more effective to start small. Like really small. That's where the 2-minute rule comes in.
Oh, tell me about that.
It's really simple. You essentially scale down your habits to the point where the very first step takes, like 2 minutes or less. For example, instead of, I'm going to write a whole chapter today, your habit becomes, I'm going to write 1 sentence.
Oh,
Yeah. See, it's about making that starting point so ridiculously easy that you almost can't say no to it.
no excuses. I like it.
So for everyone listening, what's the absolute smallest, most minuscule action you can take to start that habit you're thinking about?
It's a really good point. And then finally, the fourth law. Reward, make it satisfying.
Yeah,
This is all about making sure those habits actually stick, right?
exactly. You see, our brains are wired to repeat behaviors that feel good. We crave that positive reinforcement. Even if it's a small reward, that immediate gratification helps to solidify the habit loop. Like, just tracking your progress, even in a really simple way, can be incredibly powerful.
So like checking off boxes on a list or something.
Precisely. It's simple, but seeing those check marks gives you a sense of accomplishment and makes you want to keep going. It's about acknowledging your wins. So how can you reward yourself in a way that makes those new habits stick? What feels good to you?
You also brought up the concept of identity-based habits, and that sounds like a really interesting shift in how we think about forming habits.
It definitely is a shift. The idea here is to move away from just focusing on the outcome, like the goal itself, and to start focusing on the type of person you want to become. It's an internal shift. So instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, you'd say, I am a runner. It's subtle but powerful. You start to see yourself as someone who embodies that habit, and your actions naturally follow.
So your actions become aligned with your identity.
Exactly. And as you act in alignment with that identity, it becomes more and more ingrained in who you are. So think about the habit you're working towards. What's the identity that resonates with that? Who do you want to become?
It's a really interesting way to approach it. Okay, last thing I want to touch on is this idea of the plateau of latent potential. You know, it's so easy to get discouraged when you're putting in the effort, but you're not seeing those results right away.
I think we've all been there. It's so important to remember that progress isn't always linear. It's not always immediately visible. There are times when you're working really hard, but the payoff hasn't quite materialized yet, and that can be super frustrating.
So that's the plateau of latent potential.
Exactly. But the key takeaway here is to not give up, to stay consistent. Trust that even though you might not be seeing those big wins yet, those small atomic habits that you're building are working behind the scenes. They're laying the groundwork for those big breakthroughs to eventually come.
So it's about focusing on the process and trusting the system.
Exactly.
So just to recap everything we've talked about today, it's about making those cues obvious, making the cravings attractive, making the responses easy, and making the rewards satisfying, right? And it's also about really thinking about who you want to become and trusting that process even when you're on that plateau where things might feel a little bit stuck.
Yes. It's all about those small, consistent improvements adding up over time.
And that's the essence of Atomic Habits. It's not about these huge overnight transformations. It's about making small, sustainable changes that ultimately lead to those big, impactful results.
Exactly. It's the power of tiny hinges swinging those big doors.
I love that. So as we wrap up, here's something I want you to consider. What's one tiny atomic habit that you can actually put into action right now based on what we've talked about? Maybe think about how you can make the cue more obvious or pair it with something you enjoy or simplify it using the 2-minute rule. And how might focusing on your identity on who you want to become really help you to make those changes stick? Even just one tiny step can make a world of difference. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive today.
It's been a pleasure.